Good afternoon, everyone. Let me start by saying welcome to those who are attending through our webcast. It's great to have you here. Our third webinar, hosted by the Vendorship team. As you'll see, the poll questions are going to be put forth by Anu, who is moderating in the back end. And then, of course, our other team members who are here, who's making this happen every week, Sabina, Madhu, Susan, and Manjula. Thank you again. We hope that our discussion and questions today will contribute to a meaningful and constructive discussion. Thank you to our speakers today who are lending their expertise and experience on this important topic. We are happy to have us with here this afternoon, Bhushan and Darryl. Thank you for joining us. Our expert panelists from private and public sector today will discuss factors for redesigning business systems for growth, organizational structure, over technical infrastructure. Bhushan, thank you for being here today. I know you from past few years, and I've always considered you this silent leader who leads quietly from behind, but to a great extent and growth. And I've always admired your intelligence. And so you are the CIO and the EVP for Revy Consulting Group, LLC. You are an entrepreneur, and of course, as I mentioned, a strategic thinker as well. And of course, you wear several hats, but your forefront is in the technology, communication, wireless, and financial services, and healthcare, and many more. So thank you, Bhushan, for joining us today and for taking the time out to discuss on this topic. Darryl, Ricardo Matthews Sr., thank you for joining us. We just learned this morning we are living in the neighboring cities, so that's good to know. And Darryl is our partnership specialist at the U.S. Department of Commerce, Economic Development Administration. He wears several hats as well, and has in the past been the COO and for the National Association of Black Accountants. He's also run the National Association of Journalists, the National Medical Association as well. So to both panelists, thank you for joining us, and we're going to have a wonderful discussion. And if there are technical difficulties, please bear with us, as this is the peak time for all of us to be on the net, especially those working, and we'll get it figured out and continue it going. So Bhushan, can you, we're having a hard time seeing you, so if you can click your video or re-enter the room. So let's go to Darryl for question number one. Is just a warm-up question, Darryl, is during this lockdown period or stay at home, what is the one lesson or one skill or one thing that you've learned during this time?
Well, there are several layers in that answer. One of the things that I most appreciate is the level of productivity has gone up because I don't have that commute. I'm able to sit down at my workstation a couple of hours earlier where I would normally be in traffic. I don't have that lag time exhaust factor from having come through 90 minutes of traffic, an hour of traffic, and then trying to get my bearings, go get that bottle of water, a cup of coffee. But I also find that I'm working longer because I'm sitting here all day, and what would be the commute in the evening, it just runs on. The next thing I know, I look up, I'm down here at 7 to 7:30, and the next thing I know, it's 7 o'clock in the evening. So the days are long, but then my job is a work from home situation anyway. And so I've been doing this since June, so it was not a big step for me. But again, I feel more productive. I feel less tired, and again, it's takes discipline.
Right, and that's certainly true. The main reason I became an entrepreneur, Darryl, is to avoid the commute that I was doing every day, almost for 7 years, 2 hours in the morning and 2 hours in the afternoon. So I've enjoyed what you are enjoying now for the past 2 years being an entrepreneur. So I completely understand that extra time in your hand. Bhushan, if you are on, can you hear us? Bhushan?
Hi, Nazira. Can you hear me?
We can hear you, but we need to see you. But that's
All
fine.
right.
Yeah. Uh, but we can still hear you. So whenever you get back on, but my question was, what is that one lesson or one skill or one thing that you have picked up during your stay at home?
Uh, there are multiple things I have to say that I have learned that, people, I think it's the entire business community is learning as a collective, group. One thing that is you can still be productive from working from home. That is one thing that people are learning. The
Yes.
second point, like Daryl was mentioning, we are working more than, 8 hours or 9 hours that we used to work. The extra hours of the commute in the long traffic, those are all being put back into work areas. Those are the other things.
Very
But
nice.
also, yeah,
Mhm. Go ahead, Bhushan.
yeah. So what is also additionally what is happening is you're spending way too much time in the house too. You feel like you need to get out of the house too at times and make
Yes.
sure that, you can stretch your leg and everything. We miss those office going to the coffee breaks and stuff like that, running into the other departmental colleagues and have those small chit chats and stuff like that. Those are being obviously missed. But other than that, you can still be productive staying at home. So
Very nice. Bhushan, while we will help, we'll look forward to actually seeing you. If you can click off the video icon and click it back on, probably we'll work on that. But Daryl, the question I have for you is, with tens of millions of Americans who have been told to stay home, obviously for the betterment of the community and the society, and probably the deepest recession we might see in history. Nobody can say that yet. We don't know. So to come back to our discussion on, uh, it's not many of us who are here, or I don't know if I should use the word privileged, to be here, safe at home in front of our computer. Our paychecks are still coming through, and everything is going as normal. But sadly, it's not the true probably for the other half or other 25%, where even they do not have access to, or people do not have access to $400 for emergency situations, right? Lots of debt, job loss, increase in healthcare expenditure. How prepared, how well prepared is a typical American household for those who have lost jobs or income?
Well, and you said that we're fortunate. I definitely consider myself blessed because I am still um, productively employed, and trying to fight through this with the U.S. government, trying to fight through for our objectives. But I can't help but feel for the people who are providing or have provided support services. The restaurants are pretty much closed down except for orders to go. Uh, Uber and Lyft have pretty much, they're shut down. No one wants to get in those cars because they can't tell how sterile they are. The drivers don't want to come out and expose themselves. And if you take it from the micro to the macro level, I think we take for granted often just how interdependent, how codependent we are as a society, as a city, as the state. And I really worry, not just health wise, I really worry about the number of businesses that are going to come out on the other end. The number of employees who, right now, stimulus was a payment was a drop in the bucket for them. But I'm really concerned that we don't know what this is going to look like on the other side. And this is going to, in my opinion, redefine the business model that we employ. And I'm talking about a number of restaurants where a number of people who are just waiting tables, who are cooking, who are serving, are going to find themselves without an employer because the company couldn't sustain. So I'm really concerned as to what we will have in place. I think this is going to also redefine the way we work, as Bhushan said, and it's going to require a more structured work at home agreement with some basic productivity levels defined, because there are people who have difficulty working in a non-structured environment. And what I'm finding is that my company, the U.S. government, is engaging us in more and more conference calls, and some of which just seem to be not as productive as you would like when I have real work to do and we're on the call just talking about the work that we really should be doing. So I realize that that's a packed answer, but I'm very concerned about what we're going to look like on the other side, and the people that we take for granted every day in support services.
Definitely agree with you, Daryl. And it sort of felt nice when you said my U.S. government. So we sometimes at this times are looking for guidance from governmental officials on the next steps. So with that, Bhushan, we are hearing states are beginning to open. As we hear, we are all in Georgia. Probably we are open for business, and also our other states and cities and counties are deciding to open for business. What does reopen actually mean, Bhushan? Does it mean you just flip the switch and the light goes on, or will there be revival of some of these industries and mini levels who have already lost much of their production?
So you asked me a loaded question, so let me give you a little bit background on how, because my background is information technology, and technically speaking, um, whatever the retail industry that Darryl and the day-to-day small businesses are like restaurants and everything, what they are facing, actually IT faced it after September 11th, 9/11. When 9/11 happened, IT was one of the sectors that was hit really, really hard. So the COVID-19 effect on IT is not as much from an IT perspective, but IT in the retail industry, they did get affected. But in general, IT has been, not affected adversely, because post 9/11, the companies have already figured out to technologies have evolved that you can work from home kind of an options. They beefed up the infrastructure, from a VPN access or remote access softwares, and also the concept of cloud has picked up. So everything, all the document you want to work in a collaborative environment, all the documents that you need are on the cloud. And nowadays, I'm not sure if you have heard about the concept, a company called DocuSign. So all the contracts and all the documents, they can be electronically signed. So technology has really evolved, and from that perspective, the IT has not been all that affected from that perspective. But we did have our hiccups in IT, because a lot of companies, they did not invest a lot of money and assets in the VPN or remote access technology infrastructure. I know of one very big client of ours in the telecom sector. Being in telecom, they only invested like 4 small servers as part of their VPN infrastructure. Guess what? They crashed within 3 hours of the COVID-19 thing.
Wow.
But the good thing was their entire infrastructure was on cloud, so they were able to move it to cloud, and which expanded within a minute, so, within seconds. So when they rebuilt their VPN infrastructure within a couple of hours, 2 hours later, they were able to take the complete load of all the employees working remotely from their home. So there are good things and bad things. Now, coming back to your point of what is that opening of it means, there is a lot of mistrust going on, because nobody knows exactly what this is, whether it is um, treatable, or we're going to contract it and all that fun stuff. There is one group that says, this is America, I can't be tied down like this, I got to go to work and I'm not scared of it, one. And there are others like, what, I don't want to take a risk because the entire family is on dependent on me and stuff like that. So to answer your loaded question, nobody really knows what it means to be, well, the lockdown is gone. Well, I've been hearing the news report saying that they opened it and then temporarily closed it again because the number of cases or number of positives of infection have gone up since the day that they opened it. So, meaning, of course, with the news going around now, everybody knows how much you can rely on the news. So, you'll be verifying it from 10 different sources. So, again, I think, like Darryl said, we need to wait, give it maybe 2 months, 3 months. God knows how long it will take, but we'll have to wait it out and see what we come out from the other end of
Yeah.
the tunnel. So,
Definitely. So,
Mm.
Daryl, to continue with that thought, let's talk about specific industries. And you did mention restaurant earlier. So let's talk about, even the municipalities, the school education system, the sports, the hotels, airlines, offices, colleges, concerts, Hollywood, immigration, conferences, and we can keep going, mortgage industry,
Right.
short-term rentals, car dealers. My question is, how different is this pandemic-related disruption to that of traditional business disruption during a natural calamity? We've had natural calamities before, right? We've had hurricanes going on in states, and tornadoes and all that. But how is this different? And added to that question is, which sectors of the economy are likely to recover? And you can chime in, Bhushan. Recover the fastest, and which is one that is going to recover the slowest? Daryl, go ahead.
Well, that's a great question, and you framed it. I've run 4 nonprofit organizations, membership associations, that depend on their annual conference to, one, provide funding and sponsorships or corporate partnerships. A lot of the conferences have had to postpone or cancel their conferences this year. Now, they're finding out a bit too late that their event cancellation insurance does not cover pandemics. It force majeure, it covers acts of God, it covers natural disasters. They can cancel because of that. So a number of companies or associations are having to go back to their lawyers, back to their insurance brokers and carriers, and they're going to have to redefine or rework or rewrite their coverages because they're finding they weren't covered. I worry that we already have some colleges that were struggling with enrollment, struggling with endowments before COVID. And I'm wondering how many of those won't make it back. I'm wondering how many parents who are losing their jobs won't be able to send their children back to college. And how many of them are not confident that the environment they're sending them to will be safe for their children to go into. So I think we're going to see a major evolution in the way we deliver education, both public school and colleges. And we're not there yet, but we're going to have to redefine it and do it quickly. But airlines, we have to travel. We have to travel for work. We have to travel for pleasure. We have to travel for a number of things. I don't know if we're going to end up with one airline, if we're going to have some falling off, off of the balance sheet. But I just read an article this morning that the stock market, as we know it, is going to be totally redefined. So what we're going to look like on the other side, I'm not painting a picture of doom and gloom because we're America and we adjust. But we're going to have to rapidly adjust because I agree with a lot of what Bhushan said. I know that working for the federal government, I'm set up at home for IT infrastructure. I've got my government computer, my government cell phone, but where we're falling is the network infrastructure, the internet that I have to depend on is the community internet and the service providers. My connection is only as good as my home service provider. So that we're going to have to work on. But there are a number of areas that we've just taken for granted so long that I'm wondering, is my cleaners going to be, I think you don't live too far from where my cleaners, a small strip mall, they were just before COVID. When they first shut down, the landlord was telling them, I still expect my rent. Well, nobody's going anywhere. Nobody's bringing any clothes to them. they're not making any money. So that'll be another service, a retail service that may not survive. And we're going to need those. I mean, we all have heard how important getting to the beauty salon and getting a haircut is. But I fear that there are other ancillary services that we're just not thinking about. And we're going to have to put some great and profound thought to what this means, something like this invisible enemy, because we don't even know what we're fighting. And I know I live in a household where there are 3 people who are at risk, because of immune deficiency issues or age or otherwise.
Sure.
So, it's a great question, and we could probably spend the rest of the week ad nauseum discussing, what this is going to mean.
Thank you, Darryl. And during the beginning stages of COVID-19, I had my internet not go on for the entire day. And I could feel the pain of how nothing can get done when you don't have the internet service, especially when you're running your business, remotely. So, Bhushan, let's continue with what we just discussed with Darryl. My question was, he mentioned a few industries that are going to recover fastest, and some we don't know ever are they going to recover. But do you think will the surge in online education, online telemedicine, conferences, persist, or is it hard to know?
I think of all the species on the planet, humans have the best ability, meaning we survive because we adapt. We adapt and adapt, and that's why we are where we are as of today. So, like I said, post 9/11, everybody thought it was gloom and doom and everything. We survived. This too shall pass. Now,
yes.
Coming to the education side, like Darryl was mentioning, meaning I already saw, meaning at one point of time in my life, I was an adjunct professor at Georgia Tech Business School, and that was almost 20 years back. But I have 2 boys in college. One just graduated last week. Last 2 months they were taking online classes. Every time I see, they were on the computer, and I was thinking they were playing games. No, they were not. Actually, they were taking classes. So it has evolved. And is it there yet? No, it has to evolve further. Okay, it has to evolve way further than that. And again, it goes back to the same question: the human to human interaction. How can we replicate? We cannot replicate that. Okay, so you know Darryl gave some examples like, yes, I'm waiting to go get a haircut. I'm dying. I need to go get a haircut, of course. But restaurant industry, a lot of people, the restaurant owners, they're adapting, and they're doing, they're not doing in-house dining, but they're able to deliver. So you need to adapt. Now, he gave an example of cleaners. And I'll be honest with you, Darryl, I saw today that somebody I know who are cleaners, they came up with mobile cleaning because they know all their clients. They call them up and then say, hey, we are providing, mobile cleaning. So they come, they pick it up. That's a service they're providing. You still get your clothes clean and stuff, clothes clean and all that fun stuff. So again, each and every business in every industry has to adapt. The faster and the quicker we adapt, I think we'll survive. If we don't adapt, I think we'll perish. That's the mantra. So,
So true. You're neither giving a very negative response, or neither does it look very positive, because it's unknown at this time. But Darryl, what U.S. government is doing right now is, can we say it as it's keeping the businesses on life support, right? So it has put out loan programs. It doesn't want businesses to lay off employees, so it has given some loan programs to keep the employers' payroll keep going. But what do you think if there's going to be a long lockdown, right? Without government help, that means a very painful, slow recovery. Even I think millions and millions of Americans got help from the government as well into their bank account for monthly, quick payments. But do you think will we recover from this economic downturn, or is it causing a recession in the U.S. economy?
I hope we'll recover. And we've seen recession before, we've seen depression before, but we've been able to cope, not without a great deal of pain. And that's that safety net. How deep will we have to dig in government coffers to try to sustain us? There's discussion about a second round of stimulus checks where some people are still waiting to get their first one. Again, there's going to be pain for some. There's always going to be pain for some. But when we talk about some of the retail industries, and Bhushan talked about the restaurants that are delivering, but there were people who were waiting the tables who are out. The people who were cooking and who are wrapping up the orders to go, they're still hanging on. But there's still some who are going to slip through that net without some assistance. And this is a time for compassion. There are industries that support are in business with various industries, in business with various facets of the U.S. government. City Hall of Atlanta, for one, Fulton County, that like Grady Hospital, that are going to be supported, but then we're going to get to a place where we may not be able to get the workforce to keep functions going. So Bhushan is absolutely right. We're going to have to learn to adapt, and we're going to have to learn to adapt quickly. At a time like this, I only wish that we had think tanks or someone giving profound thought to the possibilities. And I think that's one of the lessons learned, is that we have to now anticipate that which has not been anticipated before, that we're going to have strategic plans or plans in place, for these kinds of situations, because there's still other shoes that can drop. I'm hearing that there's going to be a food shortage. Possibly restaurants will not be able, who are cooking right now, may not be able to have meat or other supplies. We don't know how far this is going to go. And if I could give a shameless plug for just one moment, one of the tasks that I'm challenged with is making sure that decennial census, where we go through and we count all residents living in on United States soil, breathing United States air, that we get a complete count, because whatever federal government assistance is going to be provided is going to be based on census numbers, is going to be based on population counts. And hospitals will be built, schools will be built based on the greatest, where the numbers indicate the greatest need. Yes, your community will have needs, but federal dollars never flow to a community just because it has needs. It goes to a community where you can stratify the needs based on the numbers. So this is a time to make sure that you complete your census, 2020 census form, because for the next 10 years, the federal dollars coming into your community will be based on the head count in your community. So
that was a good pitch, Darryl. Thank you so much. I think people heard it. We have the questions coming in the chat session. We are going to go after our discussion this afternoon. And Darryl and Bhushan, this question is for both of you. I don't know if I'm right when I say the rich are getting richer and the poor are getting poorer. If the situation during now, at this time, between winners and losers, who has the technology, who doesn't have the technology, who were dependent on globalization, their supply chain is cut, so the production is not there, and things are not moving. So how do you foresee this crisis affecting income inequality in the US? Bhushan?
Yeah, that's a very good question. I don't know where to start, but let me start from here. It is a big challenge. it is definitely a big challenge to figure that out. But I know of few things that few governments are doing. For example, I think I mentioned earlier is that when you are, you know, when the market has taken a beating, the stock prices have gone down, the valuation of the companies have gone down. So this is a time that people are waiting to take over those companies. And meaning, I don't know how true it is, but this is what the news is saying that China has been buying up a lot of companies globally. And I have read 2 weeks ago that India stood up to, they call it FDI, foreign direct investment. What they did was, if anybody is trying to take over or kill the competition in India by any of the foreign entities, foreign companies, they have to go through the government approval. And they did a fantastic move because they immediately moved because the move was prompted by a Chinese firm that bought 1% of India's largest bank that gives home mortgages. So they saw that it could be a threat to their national security. So I wish every country, including ours, can come up with some checks and balances to make sure that there are no hostile takeovers or there are no hostile, mergers or acquisitions just because the market is taking a beating because of COVID pandemic. So I wish all the governments take some action in that regard. Darryl?
So Daryl, just to let you know the time.
That's good.
Go ahead.
Great observation. Because I'm thinking in terms of locally, smaller investors, based on tips that they perceive on internet news, as you said, who can you believe, are buying bits and pieces of stock, basically acting as day traders, trying to judge who's going to be around, who they can short. Warren Buffett just sold all of his airline stocks. So then you have a bunch of small investors now standing on the side saying, oh, it'll be time to grab the airline stocks pretty soon. So that is a more complex issue than my expertise lies. But I can tell you that the rich have always done well in a crisis. They may not do as well as they like, but they've done better. I worry about people like my 87-year-old mother, who is on pension, but if some of the services that she needs are not able, she's not able to get them provided, her quality of life is definitely going to be different. Now, there's some who see this as a, quote, culling of the herd, which I think is a very uncompassionate way to look at this. We all came here for the right to life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness. We have to survive as a community as best we can. We all need each other. So we'd like to see everyone make it. One of the things that my friends who are entrepreneurs are discovering is especially with that first round of Payroll Protective Engagement, the PPA, they found out that these large banks that they've been doing business with for years, they were just a number. So I think we have to start looking at our relationships, business relationships, smaller banks, regional banks, where they know you when you walk in the door and they know your name. I think there's going to be a redistribution of process and access, not just assets. I think, really, I'm every day looking at, from a personal perspective, for my family, what is it we're going to have to do different? It's great that gas is cheaper now than it's ever been, but we're not going anywhere. There are some companies that are rebating auto insurance premiums because accidents are going down and people are driving fewer places. I'm not sure that all of business environment can sustain that. Hotels are running pretty empty. And again, the list goes on, almost endless list. It goes on and on. So we are really going to have to look at what our priorities are going to be. In the meantime, we're trying to get valuable tests or good tests, trying to get to a vaccine. And, I have some experience in an industry that runs clinical trials and medical procedures. You can't rush a vaccine to market because you wish it to be. And there are deaths that are going to occur as a result of the experimentation. So again, we have to examine everything closely and not just rush to judgment or hastily act. We'll get there, but it's not going to be by June the 1st or June the 15th.
Definitely, it's a road unexplored, and it's something that
Yes.
where the next question falls very well into the continuation is Bhushan, you represent the private sector, and Darryl, you represent the public sector, and leadership matters, right? The next few questions that I have to ask, I want you to distinguish how things are taken up in your respective field, the public or the private sector. Leadership. How important is it to have a strong leader? Bhushan, why don't you go first, the private sector, and keep it relevant to the response that we are going to give towards COVID-19, especially during these times.
Leadership is the key, no doubt about that.
Yeah.
Irrespective of public or private. The reason is leadership. The leader sets the tone, the leader sets the strategy together to make sure that he takes this entire organization through these troubled storms of COVID-19 or could be any other issue that is there. So we need to pass these, hurdles, and everything depends on the leader. He or she plays a very key role. I'll give you an example. We know of multiple companies which we have already adapted 15 years ago, but we know that this is a huge multinational company. They figured out, they did an internal study, and they said that they are having their 75% of their workforce working from home, and they are contemplating that they want the entire 75% of their workforce work from home permanently.
Wow.
Wow. They want to save so much office space. Imagine saving the office space in downtown Manhattan or Atlanta or whatever it is. They want to be able to save that money and reinvest into the business or give it back to the employees or the customers or show additional value to the customers. Not only that, they also figured out that if they can have the workforce come into work only 25% of the time, they can be 100% productive. So all this strategy, this research and everything is set, this tone is set by the leaders of the company. And it's very, very important that we have strong leaders and they look into the strategy of how, because it again, it's not like one size fits all. The leaders have to look into their specific industry, their specific organization, and what will work for them. And again, the key is adapt, and they can take their organizations through this turmoil that we are going through each and every time.
And there are, of course, the businesses and citizens sometimes do look towards the government and trust them towards the right guidance. So if you can briefly answer how important is the leadership in the public sector?
Yeah, leadership is key, and I agree with everything Bhushan said. I was working at the city of Atlanta, City Hall, when the cyber hack occurred. I was sitting at my computer when, like a fire drill, everyone unplug, disengage, turn off. And so on that side, what saved my particular department, I worked for procurement, was that we had not advanced to the level of technology that they are today. And so everything was on paper. What I am saying is that we're going to have to learn to run parallel systems, because one of the issues for us at Census was making sure that our networks were secure with VPI, that we had our own virtual, and Bhushan, you know this technology better, so I'm not going to even pretend that I can talk about it. I just know that I have it here, and we depend on it to keep our work secure and safe. But the tone in the middle of that crisis at City Hall is set by the leader. The tone at the federal government, the Census Bureau, our directors, we have asked for and received permission to extend operations, but there's not a panic. We're strategic in how we move, and a good leader is going to be strategic and realize, I don't know everything. Let me depend on my experts. I've been in leadership roles, national leadership roles, where I wanted to move in a particular direction, and my experts said, that's great, but we can't do that, and here's why. And so the leader has to pull everybody together and build a consensus. The leader is a molder of consensus, and everyone is looking at you. And it's at a time like this where a leader rises to their finest hour. And that's what we expect from our leaders. And we expect clear direction, and we expect immediate feedback when we have questions or concerns. Without that, in a vacuum, the rumors and naysayers take over, and then we have chaos. So leadership is the key, and it's critical, and it's provided at several different levels. But the first thing, as an old country mentor of mine told me, you got to look the part. And then when you open your mouth, you have to have something to say, because people will give you just 5 minutes to determine if you know what you're doing or not. And if we determine that we don't know what's going on or what's next, then we just contribute to that panic, to that crisis. So I'm grateful that we've had forward-thinking leaders at the Census Bureau, and we've hit this head on. And I'm working harder now than I was when I was out in the field, But I'm one of those people Bhushan referred to as being disciplined. I know what I need to get accomplished. So I say that if you have people that you can't trust to work from home, then you've hired the wrong people.
Yes, definitely. Very well said, and key points in what you said, Darryl. Let's get back to those points, differentiating points between public sector and the private sector. I want to talk about technology now that we've talked about leadership. I used to be in the government, in the county government, for almost more than 7 years, and there was no opportunities for anyone to work from home, right? Except if they were in high level. But things have changed, and the government is still working. But let's go back to Bhushan first. Bhushan, offices, you touched upon this earlier. You realized, and you told us this, we realized there is no need for offices, But then, don't you think there's a domino effect when there's no offices? The landlords are gonna sell their office buildings, and then things go haywire, and then there's a considerable drop in the value of American highest priced land, right? So that is one of the things. But let's go back to the technology. How important immediate attention right now for private and the public sector, IT technology? Let's talk about that.
See, the good thing about technology is not private sector related or public sector related. It is technology.
Yes.
Meaning, like Darryl was mentioning, we used to work with GSA, which is General Services Administration. Okay, meaning every time you go to GSA offices, the concerned person is always working from home. And like Darryl was saying, actually the government has moved into this remote working concept a while back. To be quite honest, they had very good, strong leaders, and they took it because they were saving on real estate already. So what has happened is that previously we used to think that, oh, I go to this office at this location, and then here is my cube or it is my office space. or here is my corner office with a fantastic view of downtown Atlanta. Well, guess what? That concept is long gone. What it is they have made it like a traveling workforce. So you come in, there's no assigned seat, first come, first serve basis. You can sit there, utilize any of the infrastructure that you need, like you need high speed printers, high speed plotters, or whatever the infrastructure you need to get your job done. You still need real estate. What I meant to say was you don't need, like, 100 buildings or campuses and stuff like that. That is what the companies are realizing.
Mhm.
But you still need. And I think this, like, again, I want to reiterate that we always adapt. I think what we are adapting, I think the new world order will be, is that um, we don't need all the 1,000 force in our building at one time. Okay, so one of the studies that I was mentioning, they did a study. It's a multinational company. They have about 400,000 employees worldwide. 400,000. Their study says, all they need is 25% in the office. 75% of the workforce can work from home or anywhere in the world, and the
Mhm.
productivity is going to be at 100%. They also realize that having 100% of the workforce in the office is not going to produce 100% productivity. Okay, so again, there is a
Right.
fine balance. I think companies with strong leaders, they need to look at the industry that they are in and how their organization need to adapt and figure out, because what it's not like one size fits all. They need to figure out
Right.
how and what will work for them and what is not. And technology is the fundamental. It is like, it works for everybody. What
Mm.
people need to struggle is, we need to have fiber to our homes. That needs to
Right.
be beefed up, because again,
Yes.
on this call itself, we are finding so much interruption. I guess, so many people are on the internet. Can it sustain? Can the backbone of this network
Right.
sustain? Can this backbone of network is secure? Can we have secure communications and stuff like that? So technologies, all these technologies were there, but they evolved much faster post 9/11, which is really the fruits that we are enjoying a little bit, but they still have a way to go.
And Bhushan, someone from our attendees did guess the multinational company that we were talking about. So, and they guessed
Oh,
it right. So,
Yeah.
Daryl, I remember 10 year or 2011 when I was in the county government, I initiated, because I was the health promotion division director, I initiated the go-to meeting for the first time. At the county level, we didn't have that at all. So my team was so excited that we started this go-to meeting, and we were actually educating parents, or educating the citizens right from their at their home. They didn't have to come to meetings or conferences. So it felt good to go into technology. And it's been so many years since then. I'm sure we all have, the government
Yeah.
has it down. But what are your thoughts?
Well, education and training for on the job onboarding is already being delivered through technology, and it does feel good to have face-to-face interaction on occasion. I've run into managers who in the government who saying, there's that feeling that if I'm not looking at you sitting at your desk, then you must not be working. And I've had to tell them, look, I can walk through your suite, and there are a number of people you think they're working, but they're sitting in their cubicles, they're shopping online, they're surfing the internet, they're watching movies, they're doing a number of now they do some work, but my point is you have people sitting right up under your, inside your enclosure. People are either productive or they aren't, and if they're meeting their goals. So it takes forward thinking leadership, visionary leadership, to realize that this is the future that we have to embrace. And I'm fortunate because I work with a number of what we call field staff, partnership specialists are to work in the field. And if we were released, we are making face-to-face contacts, but we're working again from home because they're discovering, as Bhushan said, I don't need to be as real estate intensive. There's a certain portion of there are people that have to uh, uh, what is the term they use? Because I became one of those once. I used to, when it snows and they say only you have to be certain kind of personnel. What the term is escaping me. Um, um, oh geez. But in other words, you had to be a necessary person that to report to work. And
Essential
so
services.
yes, and so I became one of those, and it sucks when you have to get up and go in the middle of a storm or a snowstorm or a tornado storm, whatever it is, because you are that person. But my point is, and point I make, when I started out, I said this is going to redesign our business models. I think that we've had employees that have been asking for the longest, why can't I work from home? I can do this from home. The technology is there. We just have to beef up, as Bhushan said, the infrastructure. Because there have been days where we've had to put off conference calls because we couldn't get enough bandwidth, because so many people were doing conference calls since this pandemic has started.
Definitely.
So we have to beef up the infrastructure in our communities if we're working from home. But I think that we're going to see, and let me give a shout out to the millennials. They've been telling us for the longest they prefer to work from home. They really aren't into teams and into groups because they're gamers. They play by themselves or online with other gamers. And I think a distributive workforce is where we're headed. And if we don't adapt to that, then we're very susceptible to the next whatever catastrophe that we run into. But we've got to change the mindset, especially here in the South, that
Right.
people are working even when you're not looking at them.
Okay.
And while I can enjoy this kind of interaction, you do have to get dressed for it, just like you go into the office if you're going to be effective. So
Definitely.
I thank you.
Definitely. Thank you so much, Daryl. Is a common ground. So when there's something goes wrong in a hospital, right, they call a code alert, right, a code blue, and then everybody knows their role, and they all join and make it happen and resuscitate, and the patient survives. Did that code alert work, Bhushan, in the private sector?
You said yes or no, right?
Yes.
So yes.
Yes, that's good to know. They are in the public sector, and when I mean public sector, starting with the cities.
Yes.
Okay, so well, that gives me more hope. Thank you for that, Daryl. So, and Bhushan is smiling, but I'm going to let it at that. Let's talk about invention, right? Especially during these times, economists have defined good economists, bad economists, or the real one, or who's the real one, right? During a tough situation, what are the good opportunities, the invention that you can make it happen? So at this time, how we keep hearing technology, and is the public sector ready for the technology? And the private sector says, hey, we have the technology, just get it from us, and this is how you do it. So how can success be judged from either point? Bhushan, quick 30-second, Daryl.
I don't know if you ever saw Star Wars long time back, when Captain Kirk said, the other person's photo came through as if they were doing video conferencing. And that was in 1970s or 80s. I don't remember, maybe 80s. You can never imagine having a video conference call. Right now we are having one. Okay. So, technology evolves, and we're going to have fantastic technology that is going to support this humankind. And I have full faith in our science and evolution of it to make sure that technology will be right up there to help out with the necessity is the mother of invention. We're going to be inventing something new out of this pandemic, so I'm very confident about that. So.
Very nice. What about you, Daryl? How can success be judged?
So I believe in technology. I believe in science. but technology is not infallible. And so, and part of it is the US government and city government, public government is always buying things from the lowest price bidder. And often you get what you pay for. When we have a technology issue, our challenge has been during the pandemic. We used to just pack up our stuff, go down to our IT department, and get our pins reset, get our certification keys reset. We've got a number of things that the average user doesn't use in order for us to make sure that we maintain security, a secure line protecting people's private information. The struggle is, how do we get service when we need it? Because you just can't call the help desk, or if your computer goes out, or if you can't get online and they say, well, do a remedy ticket. I can't do a remedy ticket because I can't get online. So we need to work through that support. That's a small portion of it, and it's only a problem during that 1 or 2% of the time when you're not online. But you want to make sure that your systems are fail safe. But technology is the key. We just need to invest more taxpayer dollars, and that's what it is. We're trying to be efficient with taxpayers' money and get the best cost, best performance. But again, sometimes it's not always the equipment you would like. You go to war with the equipment you have, not the equipment you would like to have.
Definitely. We do have several questions and only 4 minutes to go. So I'm going to sort of pick up a couple of questions from here for you to answer. And of course, 30-second closing comments from each of you before we close the session today. Again, audience, thank you for joining us for all the questions. One of the questions we have is from an attendee: what are the action plans that the government is working towards to face such situations in future? I know we discussed about it. I guess they're asking for long term. So the vaccines, the unemployment benefits, or stimulus is not a fix. Obviously, it's not. Any quick response to that, Darryl?
Yeah, I see coming out of this a series of crisis management plans for the gaps. We've had plans in place to address a lot of these things on a normal, ongoing basis, but this is unlike anything we've ever seen. I don't call it the new normal. I call it the current reality. So the government, believe me, I'm getting emails constantly about new insights. So we're thinking about it just 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, because we can't be down, because you depend on us to perform.
Definitely. Thank you. Bhushan, one more question before we head to the closing comments is, you mentioned flexibility, innovation, and fast adjusting. What does that mean for the engineering and the traditional engineering thinking, especially for technology companies?
Okay, I don't know what they mean by engineering, but from a technology perspective, again, when we talk about the workforce, we are already we learned our lessons post 9/11. Okay, from the COVID-19 perspective, there are very fewer lessons that we need to learn, because we already have the technologies, the secure networks, and everything to log into our organization's network or resources and work remotely. Now, it can be taken further. Okay, what we mean is, like, okay, again, like the statistics that I was mentioning, we need 25% of the people coming in and working. But they assume that 75% of the people can work from home. Can they really work from home? Because you need to have some sort of a self-discipline. If you don't have that self-discipline or that structure, some people need that structure. So again, it boils down to the individual thing, individual attitude, and individual uh, perspective, that can they work from home. So those people who cannot, they have to go back. So we need to, even though organization and the leaders may come up with an from a strategy perspective, each individual has to make that call and say, will I fit that bill, or I cannot work from home, or maybe I can work from home twice a week, and the remaining 3 days I go back to work and work for. So each person has to do that one. But I think it's the leaders, leaders' ability to recognize how to deal with different sets of people and their mentalities.
Definitely. So just a quick yes or no question. What does our increasing reliance on mobile technology, especially in light of social distancing, mean for the future product design? Do you see an increase in that, or yes or no?
Absolutely increase in that one. Absolutely, meaning my son even places an order for places. Everything is meaning he can survive without food, but he cannot survive without his phone.
I can vouch for that.
Okay,
Yes.
yeah. So meaning they sleep with the phone right next to the pillow. So that's how addicted the humans have become. So the mobile technologies are going to evolve, and this will just accelerate it. It is going to act like a catalyst and evolve it to the heights that we would have never imagined. So.
Definitely, and I see that a window of opportunity for the government sector, especially to jump into this and get the tools and be digitized. And Darryl, federal government workers are not allowed to use Zoom. Yes or no?
Yes, we are not allowed to use Zoom.
Okay, but you're allowed
Yes.
just Zoom, probably.
Right now, specifically Zoom. They prefer that we use Skype.
Okay, sounds good. Sounds good. Just a curiosity question there.
Yes.
20-second closing comments, starting with you, Darryl.
Sure. First, let me thank you for allowing me to participate in this forum. And I'm hoping that other groups and you will continue to have this kind of dialogue, because we have a lot of gaps that we need to fill. One of the things that I'm concerned about, there's a significant segment out there that's anti-technology, anti-intellectual. So, because you're going to start, and I'm sure Bhushan, this is another conversation for another time, they're pushing back on things like 5G technology. All of a sudden, that's going to end the world and kill us off. We need to be able to deliver information more efficiently and rapidly, anticipating the growth and the need. And this pandemic has shown us that we got to build infrastructure in terms of how we deliver the services to our constituents, to
So
our
thank you so much.
customers.
Thank you so much, Darryl. Your insight has really helped many attendees, and including myself, gain more knowledge. Bhushan, how about you?
First of all, Nazira, thank you for inviting me to participate in this forum. I know you've been looking at me for so many times, multiple times to be on one of these panels. So finally, you got hold of me. But thanks,
Yes.
I enjoyed it. I hope people, I and Daryl were able to give some insights that are helpful to the businesses. We are venturing into a unknown territory, meaning if anybody says I know the answer, no, I don't think anybody knows the answer. We're going to evolve, like I said. Humans are the best at adapting. I think we're going to adapt,
Yes.
and we will overcome. We will overcome this absolutely, and a lot of good things will be coming out of this experience, and it will be a new world order post pandemic. Somebody was joking with me the other day, it's going to be PC or AC. It's before corona or after corona, AC. So we're going to be beyond that at some point, so we'll see. But thank
Definitely.
you very much. Yeah.
Thank you so much. And audience, thank you for listening to our expert panelists here. They had a lot of information that they shared. And one conclusion that I can definitely come to is, as America and the world eventually recover, this new public digital landscape can reinvent our public technology infrastructure and make permanent improvements in how we engage with our residents. So thank you again. Thank you to the Vendorship team for hosting our weekly webinar series. Check out our website for the next webinar next Wednesday. And again, we appreciate both of you. Stay safe, and thank you again for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye
Bye-bye.
bye.
Bye-bye, Bhushan.